being recorded, and there we go. And list the attendees verbally, please.
I think you like getting me to listen just so I'll screw 'em up on purpose. Anyway, my name is Teresa Fuller. I'm the CAO with the town of Bashaw. And then I have Patrick Taylor, our public works foreman. I have Mayor Rob McDonald, Deputy Mayor Brian Gust. Hi, Brian. And Councillor Kyle McIntosh, Councillor Cindy Oram, and Executive Director of BDSS, Christine Bulow, and the lovely Terry Brown Gust, and also Mapu Man. And on our Zoom link, I have Kevin Sabo with the Bashaw Star and Stu Sackeld with the Essential Review.
Thank you, Teresa. We have no public hearing, so do we have any additions or amendments to the agenda? Would somebody care to move the agenda? I move that we adopt the agenda. Thank you, Kyle. All in favor? Carried. The minutes, everybody had a chance to read through them. Errors or omissions? Somebody here to move the minutes.
You can do that.
Thank you, Cindy. All in favor? Carried. Moving on to our delegations. Delegation number 1, Bashaw District Sports Services, Christine Buell. Floor is yours, Christine.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to start by thank you to council for having Bashaw District Support Services here tonight. I'm here to do a presentation for funding for family and community support services. I'm Christine Buell, the executive director, and as well as I'm the co-chair of the Bashaw Regional Wellness Initiative, which is a lot of the work that we're doing around the community development piece right now. So I just wanted to introduce that. On behalf of the board, I'd just like to thank the town of Bashaw for their ongoing support and the work that they do in partnership with us. I think you all know the value that is there in that, and wholeheartedly we just say thank you for that. We have a lot of pride in being trusted with the dollars to the community, and we hope that you can see that the amount of work that we're doing with the dollars, the FCSS funds that you've allotted to us in previous years, and we're committed to that in the future. I just wasn't too sure where to start tonight. I mean, I have something prepared, but I didn't feel like I needed to go through the entirety of the application with counselors. I think that people know the majority of what FCSS funding is about. I do touch on some in here. So afterwards or even during, if there's any questions, just go ahead and ask. Keeping it informal, and I'm more than happy to answer, what I can. Yeah, so for 2022, BDSS has requested a total of $70,030. From previous years, this is $20,101 more compared to that other funding. I guess precisely just wanted to let you know that those funding increases are attributed to some funding that we lost through Alberta Children's Services last year that we're continuing to recover from. We've also been slammed with quite a high cost in having to pay some rent fees now. So there's some rent costs in there. Our total would be $15,300. I'm asking tonight for $5,250 of that to be FCSS funded. And then we also want to continue to maintain the levels of community support and assessments, and as well as the community development work that we've been doing. I also wanted to touch on what the FCSS funding strategies are, and I wanted to share that with you so that you can think about why I'm asking for these programs and what we're targeting. So the FCSS funding strategy areas are to be awarded to nonprofit organizations that deliver services in doing these things. So number one is to help people to develop independence, strengthen coping skills, and to become more resistant to crisis. Number two is to develop or to help people to develop an awareness of social skills. And number three is to help people to develop interpersonal and group skills, as well as enhancing constructive relationships among people. This year, BSS requested funding to support the programs of FCSS administration, community development, and information referral. That is one cluster ask that we do there. Number two is preschool. Number three is Meals on Wheels, and number four is our community wellness and family wellness programs. We strategically ask for funding of these areas so that we can be most efficient with the dollars that we have. We're utilizing our other funding partnerships to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're gaining the greatest benefit for the community. And we also want to ensure that the demographics with the highest needs are being met. I wanted to mention that our Meals on Wheels request is stayed the same as previous years. That's a fairly stable program with the fees that we have. And there's not any rental costs, those sorts of things that come into play with that. So we are asking for increases under the following budgets. Our FCSS administration, community development, information referral, as well as in there we put like our volunteer awards, tools for schools, kind of all those little kinds of things that we do. It's an increase of $12,270. That increase will help us to maintain the levels of community support assessment, as well as ensure proactive community development work. And as well as this, we have a large chunk of the rent support that would allow us to maintain what we see as the Bashaw Area Community Resource. And what I wanted to share with you is, like in the past, many years ago, when we walked through our front door, we just had a greeting face that would support you with whatever you needed in the sense of answering your questions and doing a photocopy or connecting you to what we could. And there wasn't much for services out there back then. So aside from meeting any immediate need, that was kind of it. What you see now at our front desk is somebody that is highly trained. They're specializing in constructive conversation. We are triaging needs as we're actually having that conversation. We're supporting any of the short-term requests as well as meeting any of the low-risk needs that are in that immediate moment. So we've grown quite a bit to be more of an intake process. Although we might not actually assign a file or anything to you, we're trying to gather that information so that we're having the least amount of impact and getting the most for you and what you're needing. We've increased that screening process, and what we felt is that it has, well, we know it's kept us ahead of the crisis, and we just want to keep it that way. And so that is part of the cost also, is some of the training that goes into that, as well as having someone that is more than just a receptionist at the front desk. The pandemic has seen BSS grow in areas that we never imagined. And I think I mentioned this last year that, you know, when most places were closing up shop and headed out the door, we were actually running into the fire. And I think that for our community, there was a lot of businesses actually that were there, if not their doors couldn't be open. We're working behind the scenes, and that's what I love. We were working with them to get whatever we needed going for the community and to work with the people that were here. Yeah, we just basically, our goal was to meet people where they were at, to help them help themselves and to give them some form of hope, because for a while there it was pretty dismal, but you know, we are coming through it and we're doing well now. We just really want to maintain that quality of care and how we deliver information and referral services. And we see the importance of continuing to develop the community as well as the region to gain that greater stability, strength, and trust. There's so many efficiencies that come out of partnering with our surrounding areas, and that includes some of the other municipalities and those sorts of things too. So that's some of the work that we would like to continue to do. The second program we wanted to ask for funding for was community wellness. This year is $40,000, which is just an increase of $5,931. Although this is, I'd say, as much of an area of growth for us, we have funding that's followed it. And so it made sense that, you know, where we weren't able to access corporate sponsorship or any of our fundraising, we did lose some of our fundraising with Big Valley Jamboree and that sort of thing, which a lot of that went to this area. We still were able to make that our biggest loss up and only ask for $5,931. The community wellness program is universal in its design. We're meant to be there to support any individual or family, 0 to 99, with the extra needs that you have aside from an individualized program like Meals on Wheels and that sort of thing. So more of a connected support, the one that's ever evolving so that we can fill those gaps if there are any, as we see programs kind of pushed out the door with the Alberta government and federal government, as well as with the school divisions and those sorts of things. The funding increase will help us to support right now students that are struggling due to the interruptions of COVID-19. We will continue our extended learning program. That is something that we got to pilot and offer with some of our COVID funding. And that would include in and out of school tutoring, assisting in doing more psych ed assessments for those children. And some of those children, now we're in grade 11, have been sitting there because they didn't act up, for example, and but they're still suffering and not going to be able to make it as well in the world, I guess, past school. And it's been 10 years for them. So we're looking to kind of address those needs of the ones that, those ones that fall through the gaps and get missed and, you know, never successfully connect to a career or end up in crisis with their families and that sort of thing. And then as well as we will evolve any kinds of support that we offer so that it's complementary to the learning that exists within the traditional system. So again, filling those voids, ear to the ground, conscious working with the schools, adult education, all those sorts of systems. We'll also retain our navigation services. Those are basically doing anything past the front desk. If you're looking for anything long-term, whether it's full out filling out a CPP form, but you don't have any form of ID, all those sorts of things. Maybe you're a crisis patient with cancer, those sorts of things, we're able to support that. So it's more of that long-term one case-by-case scenario where we set up an individualized plan with you. I just wanted to share with you because I'm pretty excited now. We've done some extensive data gathering for that program in January to September of this year. And just for Bashaw area residents, that doesn't include our other service areas that we also track stats in of near Alex and Denalda. We've seen 130 Bashaw residents, 293 of them have been concrete, multifaceted referrals that we have been on the ground with them and supported. And so just to break it down a little bit more, that's averaging about 27 working referrals, so intense, you know, being there and getting it going and maintaining anything. And it's about 4 supported referrals per client. So if you think about that, those are services that have never been here before, and we're seeing it now. And it doesn't have to be the high-risk person. It can be, you know, driving down the street, or like we had a new one that's a child with cancer and those sorts of things. So the idea of navigation is that we just kind of sort through the tangled web of services. There's lots out there, but you know, how do you begin to find them? How do you begin to think about it when you're in those sorts of things that are happening? And then the last piece of that community wellness ask is that there's a small portion in there for rent to support the office that we have. We have a rotational office that we bring in our additional services. So an example of that would be the Alberta mental health counseling that comes in, our community counselor that comes in, Healthy Families, the Family Resource Network, the Sexual Assault and Abuse Center, so many more things. So those are all services, again, we never had, but through the community development work, we advocated and said, hey, like, we know that their needs are here, but you're not meeting them still. Here's an office, we're wanting to work with you. We'll be that piece that connects them to you and gets them to you so that there's no excuse of, I should say excuse, but no reason of transportation barriers or whatever that may be. It's our goal to make it successful. And so it's proven well, and actually in some of our offices, we have up to 3 desks where some of our admin staff work together just because it made sense to have those individualized offices available for these rotating services. And the last one is for preschool. So we've asked for $7,500 there. That's an increase of $1,900 from previous year. It's basically we just felt the impact of the weakening economy. Again, some of our big valley dollars went there. We do lots of fundraisers through preschool, and we just don't feel that we'll get the response or that it's timely to ask for a lot of donations at this time. $7,500 was supported in years past. We were able to have that decline in the last couple of years just because of some funding that was available either through pandemic funding or through some reserves that we had that were earmarked and had to be spent. So basically that sums that up. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. We built their budget to be mindful of knowing kind of, I guess, where our areas of impact could be best delivered. And we know that it's probably exceeds what you guys have available there. We just don't know what is changing around FCSS. And if, like I've said before, if the county contribution is different, maybe there's different grants that you guys can access that, you know, rather than returning any portions, we have to keep here in the community. So this is what we do need to keep going with what we have available. I don't know, I keep thinking that we've kind of seen everything and we're where we need to be. And again, we've grown and this is where we're at. So the pandemic has been a good thing in the sense that it really forced us to method of delivery, kind of how we delivered, the timing of everything, and what partnerships we truly become. And so in saying that, the USS is good. Is there any questions from anybody from written or what I should include is that in the written part, I do have some more stats. So I try and break down so that it's comparable for you to maybe analyze whether your invested dollar is going further in one direction or the other, whether it's based on business or how many clients served. Those things are built into the package, but I didn't feel like to utilize time tonight to discuss.
I have a couple.
Yeah.
First one I'm wondering about is you mentioned you're not asking for more money for Meals on Wheels. You know, the news right now is speaking about inflation, in particular food costs are on average 5% higher, several items 15 to 20% higher. Has that been accounted for in your Meals on Wheels budgeting?
Yeah, it has been. We did a slight increase probably a year and a half ago, and we jumped up. We should have jumped up about anywhere from 60 to 75 cents, and we jumped up $1 just knowing that we were following what restaurants were doing, and so that should be able to withhold what we're doing.
Kind of absorb that.
Yeah.
My second question was, could you explain to me the relationship that you have with, on page 3 of your report, the non-FCSS contracted services? So as an example, you were talking about doing ed psych type things. That to me just struck me as something that Bashaw Adult Learning would be doing. And I see this, you know, reception, admin support, etc. So could you just describe the relationship you have with your contracted services and how, I suppose, dollars flow?
Yeah, for sure. So like for the Bashaw Bus Society, for example, or the food bank, those are administrative type contracts that we have. So we do all the bookings and basically their board shows up for direction to a staff that's allotted to represent their meetings at their meetings. And so we basically follow their lead. I mean, we're doing the service for them in a feet on the ground doing the work. Our relationship around, say, even the psych ed assessments, it's not necessarily a cost that we would incur ever to do a psych ed assessment, but to have the discussion around it. So if it's a need that's happening and we hear it from, you know, the school and adult learning, we'll look at who has the dollars to currently fund it and then who would be the best place to actually monitor and run those kinds of things. So I can't say that that is an actual adult education cost, rather than it's something that I guess we commit to as a goal within the community, and then we figure out where it should best sit. So that's the work of doing that there. I feel like I should provide some clarity maybe around the community resource center and all of us being there. With adult learning housing that rental agreement with the Alberta government, we're in there as, I don't know what they call them, I think like a satellite office. So we're like any other service that they can bring into the community to better support adults and their families. And so that's where we fall into, is the component of families. And we work together on everything. It's pretty seamless. And I think that forever people call the building BDSS, but it maybe should have always been the Community Resource Center, because Jackie always works so quietly and her board in the background doing their things. But adult learning has really evolved to be more around community support than just the adult portion, as they're doing that early intervention and prevention. I don't know if I confused anybody more or answered your questions, but.
No, I think that was helpful. I did just want to touch on one final thing. You started by introducing yourself in your role with the Bashaw Regional Wellness Initiative. What is BDSS's piece of that, and how do you envision the town supporting that separate initiative?
Yeah, so BDSS is at the forefront of that because it is around children, families, and any individualized support. That evolved from simply having crisis happen for the school, our CMP, ourselves, and adult learning, where we came together in a conversation and we were like, okay, we need to do more. And in doing more, that meant inviting services to come to the table and talk about what Bashaw area needed. So what is there now is 28 partners around the table, both from the idea of actually offering a service to being there to work together on a service. So we have like the Village of Denalda, the Alex and Mary Community Resource Center, and food banks, and all that sort of thing there. With moving forward, I guess, and having the town's involvement there, we've always felt like you're there. The information is shared. Some of it does tie into the pandemic and the disaster services side, which we did a lot of work with Murray on it. And so, yeah, invitation is there to come sit at the table. You know, when we talk about it maybe being more focused right now on the mental health side, so much more has come out of it. We're so intertwined, I guess, in serving other areas, and some of our biggest areas are right now the partnerships with Denalda and the partnership with Alex. And those have a crime prevention side that we're targeting. So those were some areas of very, very high need with RCMP, that they just had that habitual return to service where sometimes it's 6 calls a day without word of a lie. And they're just like, help, like we can't even do policing of crime because we're dealing with this social side of things. And so that is basically what the Bashaw Regional Wellness team is, and then connected to the whole initiative for the region.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll just ask if anybody else had any questions.
I was just gonna comment that I do connect in on the regional wellness. And I guess I've just kind of found that it's like you guys have all pulled together this big buffet of needs and services, and you leverage what you have to create more. And so it's not as simple as pulling out, okay, all the pizza and Italian out of this morgue, you know, and just think that's what's funded or whatever. They just basically leverage the dollars to make it bigger. That, and I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, because I'm not sure if like Denalda and Alex and, you know, any of those areas, if they contribute funds as well, or how that looks. But I know in the past, we've also kind of had conversations where it would be helpful to sometimes have the numbers of individuals served in some of those areas, because we're crossing county borders. So with Bashaw being in the southern part of Camrose County, we're connecting with Lacombe, we're connecting with, you know, different counties that are in the neighboring area, and creating our own region that crosses boundaries. So that's where I think, you know, having the other counties involved, having an idea of how many of those individuals are served. That way, you know, because right now we get a contribution from Camrose County of a set amount, but it would be handy even to have some, you know, coming in from Stettler County, because that's where Denalda is located, and, you know, that's right. So, and I don't know what that looks like, or what we'll have to put in place to, you know, have conversations about that. That's just the way it's been. We've never just said, no, you know, geographically you're in a different county, we're not going to serve you. That's not how we see it.
Well, and our stats speak to that now. So that front end triage and our navigation, those are all very, very well documented in geographical area that they come from. fall into. What I can tell you is that even at Bashaw regional decision meetings, we do have Campbell's County represented there. And over in Alex, working with that as our sister office, because we did help to get that off the ground. Macomb County's bought it wholeheartedly. I'm not gonna say that they will again, but certainly when they were able to give us feeding the region and that Alex area specifically, like they had $2,600 in the beginning and they came back with surplus beyond. That was no there, that to start that center. So I think that they see the impact. It speaks volumes when you have your CMP come. See that because they're responding to this domestic or, you know, even just whatever's happening social wise at this house, you're now not getting served over here. So if we can alleviate this side, which we're specialized in training to deal with, and let's guys, we gotta deal with that stuff and we can deal with this.
So just curious and kind of what Teresa was saying with, you know, the county of Stettler, the county of Lacombe. So if you do get somebody that walks in through the doors and they are from a different county, are you sourcing resources in their county for them, or are you still supporting them through BDSS's office here?
It doesn't happen too often that we don't connect them back to their center
Okay.
or back to the area. As you can maybe see that there's some situations that they don't want service.
Right.
They're either ashamed or whatever it looks like, or just have not had a good experience and what, say, mental health could look like in Macomb compared to what we're accessing them from Camrose.
For sure.
So it's about where the success is for us. And we do track those ones. We even had one from Vermilion and one from Strathmore that
Wow.
just jumped in on Zoom to meet with some of our therapists here. Again, it didn't take away from a client that would have been served here because it was in a vacant appointment.
Right.
So we're just making sure that we're being efficient, and if word has traveled that far via somebody having a conversation.
Your reputation clearly speaks for itself then.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
That they're reaching out that way. So yeah, obviously we don't want to draw on resources from here to take
Right.
away. But if the availability is there and it's that first connection, that happens. And then we get them connected back to where it makes sense in their hometown and that sort of thing.
Anybody else? Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Well, I invite anybody, new and returning council members to come down, see what we're doing, ask questions. Kind of we touch a little bit everywhere in town, and whether you're a preschool or helping us deliver the Christmas meals, that sort of thing. Got lots to do.
Somebody like to make a motion to accept that information? Thank you, Brian. All in favor? Carried. You're welcome to stay and join us.
Knowing Christine, she
Spectate what
probably
goes
has
on.
lots going on.
Or you can run for the door as fast as you
Yeah.
can.
Well, I have to move to work again, so I'll go to that. That's okay. You know, we're fine. How about that?
Yes.
We can let you know. Can I help? I'll just do myself. Thanks for having me, everybody. Fine, maybe tonight I hope we will before the night.
Oh, yeah, we will.
If you want a tight tip, it sounds like that's good.
Try to.
We're only at 4 hours.
All right, have a good night.
Thank you, Christine.
See you guys.
Our next delegation from the Bashaw Municipal Library, Terry Maple.
If you're comfortable. As I was
Sorry for missing the deadline, getting the stats from Cindy, and also on the back, you have a nicer budget. I think there's a mistake with an extra zero.
I noticed the extra zero, but it didn't
Yeah,
bother me at all.
yeah. Well, I do. I obviously do, and that was it. So,
So you hit the zero there, eh?
that's right, that's right. It's a good thing it was after the. Yes.
Here, Donald, the counselors, thank you for your connection. Thank you for funding the tax. Support. About 53% of patrons are from the town of Bashaw. 42 are from the county of Camrose, and the remaining 5% are constituents of the county of Panoka and the county of Macomb. Our services are basically infancy to infinity. We offer programs for all ages. A lot of our programming is served out of the Bashaw Library, but to make the most of our resources, we do a lot of partnering with the Bashaw Meadows, with BDSS, adult learning, our fundraising due to the pandemic. We were doing a silent auction, and because of exposure, we've not been able to do that for the last 2 years. We're hoping to try it in the spring, depending on numbers. We haven't given up on it yet. Last year, we requested less from the town of Bashaw, given that we were closed due to pandemic restrictions, but this year we're asking that you would reinstate our previous funding. I'm Terry Brown Guest. I'm the chairperson of Bashaw Library, and Maypoo is our treasurer, and so she's going to go over the financial part of it. Any questions as far as stats?
I'm pretty familiar with
Well, fortunately, 2 of our counselors have been trustees, and we have insiders. I just want to say our library runs on a shoestring, and we do our best to streamline our resources, and people see that we offer a valuable service, and we do get individual things. So that's always very helpful, and with that, we've been able to maintain our current expenditures with our budgets. This year, we're going to dip into reserves. That's where you're from. Go ahead.
Yeah, on the back, so it shows the budget. So we just have the revenue and we rely on the grants, right? So it's just have the breakout of the amount of money that we've been usually getting, which doesn't mean that we will. It's always a surprise, right? So when it comes to the time and see we will get that same amount or what's going to happen. I guess we're all in the same boat. We used to get from the county of Camrose, we used to get $11,650, and we went down to 8,281 and $49. So that's already like a 3,300 difference. Plus, like Terry mentioned, we used to budget around $2,000 on the fundraising, which we have not been able to do, and likely not sure what's going to happen with them. So that adds up to another $5,000 that we were counting on and we're not getting. So that's why we basically just were asking again for the 8,500 that we were asking for. And the expenses, if you look at it, we're just covering
staffing and the rent and insurance, that's over, that's what's covering the money that we hopefully get. So if you have any questions or anything, I can.
It's a pretty straightforward budget. Any questions?
I have one brief one. So your expenses don't include access to new materials or anything like that, or where does that funding come from?
So Parkland Regional Library, part of their contribution are new resources and, what was the second part? Sorry, Kyle.
I think that more or less addressed where I was headed.
Okay. Yeah, that administration office just it's the rent, insurance, and telephone bill, just the basics, the numbers that won't change. We actually need that to run the. And if we don't get it, then we're looking at reducing. This year it changed. We are not going to open Wednesday mornings, and we are going to change our hours from 1 till 7 on Wednesdays to try and make the library more accessible to people that work.
Is it any programming that's coming in the evening or just generally being open?
Generally being open.
Okay.
We've got some ideas, but we want to see what our client numbers are before we invest a bunch of time into that.
Any other questions, comments? I think we're good.
So much.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
May I have a motion
I think
to
it's
accept
my
that?
turn, so I move that we accept that presentation as information.
Thank you, Kyle. All in favor? Carrie?
You didn't get invited to say so we just.
I was just getting to that part.
I was gonna say, does Brian need a ride home now?
Thank you very much.
Good night. No bylaws, so we'll move on to new and unfinished 7.1 subdivision from the CNR.
Attached is the recommendations from Cameron County. And so basically what's going on is there's a Canadian National Railway owns a piece of property along the railway on which Benchmark Commodities is located. And Benchmark Commodities in the past had leased the site and the buildings and so what they were looking to do is subdivide and purchase it. So from a functional standpoint, there really isn't any changes other than just the ownership of the land. So instead of Canadian National Rail owning the piece of land, they've subdivided it off so that Benchmark Commodities can purchase it. So that's the simplistic part about it. The recommendations from Camrose County were that the application be approved subject to the following conditions: that the subdivision is to be carried out in a manner approved by the registrar of land titles and drawn up by an Alberta land surveyor. Any outstanding taxes are to be paid to the municipality. All drainage be directed to the street or lane. Drainage cannot cross property lines. The developer pay the $100 endorsement fee. And the notes were that no reserves are required as part of this subdivision application, and that any development on the property will require approvals from Alberta Transportation to ensure that site traffic is not adversely affected by the highway. And the Alberta Transportation has forwarded documentation via email that they present no objections, just that any additional developments that occur on the site be forwarded their way. And that, as with the development permit process, that's kind of a typical standard with anyone that's connected or adjacent to Highway 53. So the recommendation is to pass the lengthy motion that is written on the information piece. like, me to read it for you, I certainly can.
What is the will of council? We do the thing what it says.
Yeah.
All in favor? Carried. Seven point two, Bashaw Bus Society budget information.
So the Bus Society has typically just provided us with a letter. They don't generally present their budget. And it's quite consistent with what they have asked for in the past. And we typically offset these costs through our MSI operating dollars, which are anticipated to be roughly about the same for 2022. We're expecting probably around 59,000. So it's kind of interesting because inadvertently we become reliant on some of those grants to cover like the Parkland Regional Library, the library requests that came to us today, as well as the Bus Society. So it's just one of those things where, yes, it's handy to keep taxes lower and covering these costs, but it also creates a dependency and also an awkward situation in the event that MSI operating is reduced or eliminated, could present an increase in our annual budget. Not sure if you guys had any questions for me to direct to the Bus Society specific to their operations. Seemed like everything was pretty lean on there, but not sure if anything jumped out at any of you folks.
Is it only town residents that access the bus?
No,
Okay.
they are doing runs, right now they're doing a run, I think every month, and they go through Denelda, and they will stop at Denelda and pick up residents, and they pay the same fee that everybody else does. But yes, it is more than just Bashaw. And I don't know if they are still doing it. At one time, they also did a run, and they would stop at Farintosh and pick up people. And again, they paid the same fee that everybody else did, but it's going right past those. It is benefiting people outside of Bashaw.
Well, and I know in the past, Camrose had a regional transportation initiative going on. It was a pilot. And I'm not sure if we were looped into that to any degree or if we were, I don't recall. But I believe we had like at least one trip a week or something to Camrose.
It was with that group, and I believe the funding is ended
It's
with that.
done.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I move we accept their correspondence as information.
Thank you, Kyle. All in favor? Carried. Bashaw Community Center water consumption data.
In our past discussions, council, we requested to have the information regarding the community center water bills. And so I figured I would also just sort of keep handy their information regarding their financials. This year, they're basically, well, had they had paid for the full year, they would have paid $974.09. The only billing to date that I know of that we have forwarded to them was just the October billing. I think was the first one that we sent their way.
And that almost $1,000 appears to be based on effectively no rentals. Well, that's my note, but there wouldn't be many.
I don't have access to like their booking calendar, but based on the financials, it certainly would appear so.
What's the minimum consumption before it goes above the base charge?
Sorry?
What kind of consumption level do they need to get to before it goes above the base charge? Or is it base plus?
The base bus is
Base- oh,
always,
yes.
Okay.
so
The base charge is charged regardless of if you turn your taps on whatsoever. And then the consumption cost, that's the second last column there, cons cost, of course. And that's based on their 20 cubic meters of water and would be billed at $3.47 a cubic meter.
So was the hall being billed previously for the base and sewer and garbage, or they with nothing?
This is the first billing for October.
So when we're looking at the 19 and 20 ones, that's what it would have been had we charged, okay.
They had asked for a projection. And so we installed the meter. It looks like the meter was installed before August 30th of 2019. And because originally we didn't even have a meter in this building. So once we got the meter installed, then we started basically collecting the data, where I summarized the data for them, because when I would attend the meeting and let them know they were going to be billed, they were wanting to know roughly how much it was going to be looking like they were going to be.
But it's just the water component that's being added to the bills, which was never added before. Like they previously paid the base rate and just garbage,
Paid nothing,
no garbage, no base.
no
rate,
garbage, no base,
Sewer, nothing.
nothing.
We
So
subsidize the whole
October
check.
is the first bill that we've ever forwarded to them.
Okay, and so this is for the entire building?
Correct.
So I know the daycare, the preschool, the library in here too, so will they absorb some of these costs, or is this strictly the community center is paying for all?
Well, the community center has the lease agreements with the library and with the play school and preschool. And so it would be up to them to renegotiate
Right,
those lease
okay.
agreements to include any utility billings.
Okay.
Anything else?
I can make the motion if you'd like.
Please do.
I'll make the motion to accept the information.
Thank you, Cindy. All in favor? Carrie? And the monthly statement.
Dropped a little bit just because we paid another, one of the final checks, not the absolute final check on the lagoon project, but another payment to complete most of the lagoon project. And there will be a holdback as well. Still owing, but we'll get the application in for the funding. So from the Alberta Water Wastewater Partnership Program and then the ICIP program. So there should be another reimbursement from that project.
Any questions for Teresa on the financials? Whose turn is it to make a motion to accept his information?
I will do that.
Oh, thank you, Brian. All in favor? Carried. 7.5 residential lot listing.
So this is the listing of the lots and the current pricing that we have and the assessed values and some descriptors. I basically included the full listing because I just thought, well, if we're looking at 4 of them, we could look at all of them. And so the main ones that I have been in touch with Randstad Realty are the top 4, being roll 4809, 4813, 4817, and 5014. The other one here is 082011. This one is kind of a tricky one because it's really not a great location for development because it's right at the end of a street. And the elevation is really terrible for sewer connection. The best way to describe it is at the end of 48th. So,
That'd be the road running along the railway?
no, it's along Valley Lake.
Oh, okay.
And so there's that one little white shop that has a little house beside it. And the house is right on the edge of the
Okay, yeah.
lake. So it's not at the end of that street, but the next block over to
It's,
the
used to be a road allowance.
Yes,
Yes, it was.
yes,
That was the one that we did for rights
Yes.
yes.
many
Yeah.
days ago.
Yeah, so it's very unique.
It's actually a nice, nice lot and that you have nobody behind you. I mean, and it's, you have a view to the Valley Lake.
Yeah, and in the past, well, and you can't really access the lake because it's all treed in right now in that area. So, and it is the end of the street.
Yep.
But again, the elevation in there as well, to actually provide a service connection specific to sewer in it, could present a really big challenge. So that's why I've kind of just sort of left it off in the sidelines, thinking it might be, you know, a bit of a reserve to access Long Valley Lake or something like that, or trail or something in the future. I'm not sure.
Well, they say global warming is gonna raise ocean levels, so we can use that as a boat launch one day.
Trees out in between. And then the bottom four are the vistas over by Bashaw Meadows. So, and the listing prices are, you know, as they were all kind of listed in the 40s, 45s. Because the time when we determined this pricing, there was like teeny little houses, older houses around town that were, dare I say, you know, habitable, but needed some attention. And they were being listed for like about 38,000. So we kind of thought we'd list the empty lots for right around 40. So it became more appealing to buy a little old house and knock it down and rebuild. Or, you know, as an option to sort of level the waters. But I don't know if that's still the,
When were these assessed values done? Like within this year or?
probably a couple of years, but they haven't changed much. I can certainly go back and reconfirm them, but the assessed values really, from my observation, haven't really changed much. Like for a vacant land. So I'm not sure if you guys wanted, well, I can go back and review the assessed values to confirm where they're at if you would like, and then bring it back, or if you want to do any changes to the pricing, and then that way I can notify Kyle as well.
Do they have any recommendations?
What was the recommendation was top four to lower by 10,000? Was that what the?
Yeah. And like locally, the last lot that's residential lot that sold for around 26,000 inclusive of GST.
And that's fully serviced and.
Yeah.
What year did that one sell?
20?
Is that the one over in
Sproul?
Sproul? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a little smaller lot, bit of an infill.
Yeah, it's,
It's comparable to like our top four in size. It was pretty close. Definitely smaller than the bottom four. Like the bottom four Vista ones are quite a bit larger.
there, yeah.
Are we getting anybody asking about price and walking away?
I haven't had really anybody asking about price as of late.
So no one's even approaching on these,
No.
because nothing stops them from putting forward an offer.
Yeah, making a lower ball offer anyway, yeah.
That's the way I read it. Lower the price, just lower the offer that you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna come in and offer you more.
No.
Not, well, in some places they do, just not
Not
real Alberta.
And it always is, so it's priced and then we negotiate. I don't know, having some lots for sale that are priced considerably less than this, I haven't had any offers. either.
Right.
It's just, there's nothing selling. There's very little interest.
And those are nice lots, and one of them comes with a great neighbor.
Direct line to the mayor.
It's in Canada string, right?
So I personally I don't know, I don't see that there's much to be gained by lowering the price at this point.
I think if all of a sudden the value of them was to drop, maybe we consider it, but I agree,
We're already giving them the opportunity to come in below assessed value.
absolutely.
That's right.
So we're inclined to leave it this as is. Do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
I move on direct administration to leave the Bashaw residential lot listing prices as they are presented.
Thank you, Kyle. All in favor? Carried. Moving on to committee and staff reports. I had one meeting. I had the Highway 1221 Water Commission meeting on Friday,
The 12th.
the 12th. And I forgot my notes, so I'm gonna lean on your memory a little bit. The project over the line over to Clive is 200 and some odd thousand over budget. Turns out that big hill on the east side of Clive is a rock.
It's like granite.
Yeah.
They plan on bringing a piece for us
It's-
to look at.
It's one rock.
It's a big granite.
Their
Yeah.
geologists come to the conclusion that he understands why the glacier went around it. Because the glacier wasn't moving it.
What I'm hearing is they have a market for countertops now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Edberg is pretty much connected, waiting on parts to get that turned on.
With the Clive project, the rock, they had some CP rail holdups
Yes.
Yeah.
CP
and some
is just
supply chain.
supply
issues.
chain issues. CP just being CP to deal with.
Yeah.
Yes, they're figuring by March they'll be hooked up and turned on.
For both.
Edward and Clyde.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is the last. And that is it.
That's phase 6 and 7.
So we're moving into management and supply instead of expansion and construction. Their budget is actually calling for a minusculely small reduction in our water rate that they're going to be giving us from 3.055 per cubic meter to 3.049. Is that really? Some reserves, yes. With that price. Yeah.
So 2022 will go down, 23.
Projected. He also mentioned that we are, what did he say? Less than 10 years away from starting to pay off debentures. Which depends on what the will is at that time, but could see there is potential for a reduction in water rates at that point.
We didn't talk about line replacements already or anything.
It's 75 years out. There was very brief discussion, and it was basically, do we start putting money away now?
Is it our problem or
Or-
future generations'
yeah.
problem?
It's 2 generations away. Is it up to us to pay for this line
Maintenance. on this.
and 2 generations down the road line?
75 years away. I don't even think I'm gonna be around that.
Think positive.
Yeah.
some of the advances.
Medical advances, you know.
Well,
What
I
was
was gonna
that
say,
case?
if we're gonna put our money on the counselor that's around in 75 years, it'll be on Kyle.
I'm fine on it. Just out of stubbornness.
Determined.
Keith Morris is retiring from the county of Lacombe. So he will no longer be the manager of the Highway 1221 Water Commission. That is being taken over by Dion.
I didn't write down his last name.
Dion, what's his name?
Like Adele.
Is he still a special?
Yes, he works for the county.
Yeah, and he's been kind of Keith's right-hand man.
So the county of Lacombe is going to continue on as the
So
manager.
basically nutrition. Who's the chairperson of that?
Brendan Knight is still the chair.
And Cindy Troutman is vice chair.
Okay.
Yeah. Dion's last name here for you. Dion Burlock.
And that was the only meeting I had.
You had other things.
Yes.
I had other things, but right. Facilities tour and a council orientation.
I don't remember it's.
Oh yes, and late delivery for Remembrance Day. I gotta get better at
What
writing
would you
stuff
do
down.
without Kyle?
Also brought greetings to Bashaw Schools Remembrance Day.
Yes.
Not that I would know about that.
No. Deputy Mayor Gust.
I had obviously the facility tour and council orientation, as well as a fire department meeting on a Wednesday, last Wednesday. They've got some new members again. I think there's 3 that night. They purchased some walkie-talkies, some good quality high-end walkie-talkies with the fire department fundraising money in order to communicate on site when they go to a fire, and they were testing them out and they seem to be pretty happy with the range on them. They probably will be looking at possibly doing some training, and in order to do that training, if they do it, because they'll need textbooks, and there's a cost to write the exam, and so they may be coming with a budget item in that regards in the future. That's it.
Thank you, Brian.
Councillor Northey provided me with an email. Good evening, please accept the following as my report for council this evening. I attended the organizational meeting for the Parkland Regional Library. I learned and asked questions about our role and the outcomes they're looking for. Parkland Library System is a support to our local library and others throughout the region. They do operate 4 libraries that do not have a municipal council to support them, but otherwise the system is basically an excellent resource. They have been unable to approve their budget as they've only have about 1/3 of the municipalities who have approved this submission. 2/3 have not, but it was nice to hear that we were not one of them. Thanks to our administrators' efficiency. I did report on this meeting with the Bashaw Library, as there has been some confusion in the past about the role of Parkland Library, and I believe they better understand now. I have connected with Bashaw Area Recreation Board and will be receiving meeting dates as soon as they set them, and the Bashaw Historical Society will meet in December. And in closing, Jackie, and she reports that she was unable to attend tonight, but is willing to connect by cell phone for the in-camera portion.
Councillor Oram.
In addition to the council orientation and facilities tour, I first just wanted to thank both Patrick and Teresa for organizing that. I, for one, learned a lot at the facility tour, so thank you for taking the time and effort to educate us. And then I attended the 1221 Water Commission meeting with Mayor Rob McDonald as well. I think he covered the basis of it. The only other thing was we briefly went over the draft budget for 2022, and that will be reviewed and voted on the December 10th meeting. Upcoming, obviously we've got council orientation again tomorrow. I've got the CALA meeting on December 3rd. And that's about it.
I was just thinking to myself about the draft budget. I did receive the letter and information about that, but it was just prior to the deadline for this agenda preparation. And I do have it on our roster to discuss when our next meeting in December is, but it might not be before their December 10th,
Well, we should have a meeting before that.
so
But
Yeah.
Teresa's on
Oh, no, yes.
vacation.
I'll be out of the office unless you want me to put the agenda together and have Natasha coordinate with you guys or do the meeting with you.
Yeah, we can figure that
I'll
out.
chat more about that in a bit.
Just to backtrack one moment, that upcoming meeting on December 10th, I'm unable to make it. So if I could lean on an alternate. For the Highway 1221 meeting.
I will be there for sure.
Is that in person?
Yeah.
Lacombe,
Look on.
December 10th?
At 9:30.
I can.
Cindy will put you to work.
Well, I was gonna say, if you want to travel with me, I do have one small plant pickup in Red Deer.
I fell for that too.
Yeah.
Just a normal day.
Rob got to join me to pick up barbed wire and a bunch of plants. I promise we'll just do plants if you come with me. It's just poinsettias and lemon trees.
They're not really stinky plants, are they?
Lemon trees and poinsettias, so
Oh,
we're
yeah,
good.
that kind of stinky.
Brian suddenly unavailable.
What time is it?
9:30.
That's the hard part.
The early
Macomb
morning.
County's got a really nice council chamber.
They
Yes,
do.
Yes, they do. Okay, I will. I will.
Thank you. Councilor McIntosh.
I don't have much. I have orientation, I have facilities tour, I have Remembrance Day, and if I could just ask that administration help me get some contacts with some of the groups I need to connect with, community hall and regional emergency management. I haven't been able to find lines of contact there.
You're gonna help me with youth center.
I will certainly help you with youth center
I figured.
in my other role.
Will do.
Thanks, Kyle. Patrick, you're up.
Well, I just want to say Saturday was a lot of fun. I enjoyed having you at our facility and I hope that you got some good insight as to what we're dealing with and then we go through our list here. Parks, we now have 10 painted benches. We'll get together 5 tomorrow. Streets, all the basins have been cleaned out, all the trouble ones anyway. Back alley maintenance, I think we're pretty much done now for that for the year. And sweeper's been put away, winterized. Maintenance on the generators are in progress and we'll get them done here within the next few weeks. Steamer is back tomorrow and lift station 1, we're still waiting on those guys to give us the go ahead to pull the pump, and water meters are as soon as we can get in, and that's that.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I just ask real quick? We've got the training coming up for staff on heavy equipment.
Yeah, Thursday we have loader and Wednesday next week we have the Bobcat.
Okay.
And
And
it's,
that's, how many personnel, just one, or?
right now, there's two of us, myself and Peter. Lindy, I was just informed, is not ready to take that right now because she really hasn't had a lot of training because we're kind of short-staffed. So instead of throwing her in there, we'll wait for another time. I do believe you said there
There
was
is
people,
community
yeah,
interest.
community, and yeah. So I think we have our numbers
Yeah.
anyway.
So I know for sure, one staff for both training sessions, from Alex. And then we've had quite a bit of community interest. So I'm pretty confident that we have the required minimum of 4 staff for each. So if we have our minimum of 4 staff, basically we'll be billed once 175 plus GST per staff. And so it's just gonna be as a flow through where we're billing out whoever's taking the course the same as what we would be billed.
Just a cost recovery and
Yeah.
just to hit
So-
a minimum.
Yeah, so, and with the loader training, I'd have to confirm, but there seemed to be some community interest on that too. But if that's, yeah,
Is this a certification or a recertification, or?
it's training that's offered by Alberta Municipal Health and Safety Association. And so the intent is that individuals taking the training have at least been on the equipment before and some understanding. But the focus is primarily on safe equipment operation. So they're not gonna be like an expert handler per se with the equipment, but they'll be able to use the equipment safely, be aware of the surroundings around them without hitting something, you know, that type of thing. And it's an accredited course, as Alberta Municipal Health and Safety Association works kind of collaboratively with WCB provincially, to generate course and training and OHS compliance.
So we receive, you know, benefits from a WCB insurance, et cetera, standpoint as well for.
If actually, that's kind of the second part to it, where we have to work on getting accredited or the terminology is a core or a
Or the
PIR or whatever it is, performance incident reduction or something like that.
Mhm.
So we're still working on our program. However, we have had inspectors in and, you know, they've been very, very helpful in supporting the implementation of our program. And we're on our way, I feel. It just needs more embellishment and tweaking and consistency. But overall, I believe that staff work safely and have conversations about safety. And it's just taking it that next level where it's more consistently documented and, you know, that type of thing. So, and OHS has been really very helpful. Even, you know, when we've had situations where if an inspection was called for at a site, we came out of it in a very positive way where, you know, we've generated working alone on health and safety standards and then replaced equipment that was unsafe and just served to improve the situation on an ongoing basis.
Awesome.
Thank you, Patrick.
Don't worry, there's no way I was giving you that.
That's why you're both here.
Teresa, your turn.
Background on that, sorry.
Hey, no, you go.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because in the past, when OHS shows up, you kind of go, oh. But they've actually been really, really great to work with in every situation that I've had to deal with them. And not that, well, we've had the arena and the shop. So, and then one visit over COVID, and they were just really, just very helpful with offering resources, so. My action list item from November 1st, the council schedule IDP, MVP, ICF, and strategic plan will be booked in the new year. And then assessment review board members motion, of course, the letters generated and sent to Cameron County. Emergency preparedness, just to update the contact list and arrange the online access for the elected official training. And recognition of outgoing and incoming foreman, the social media post was generated and in circulation, thanks to Loretta helping me out with that. Outstanding from prior meetings, the curling rink roof the letter to municipal affairs, which I've finished that, and then they wanted a bit more details on it, so just a bit of follow-up to do there. Meetings, the Bashaw Chamber of Commerce, Human Resource Consultant, project discussion. We're working on the master rates and schedules bylaw, where it's everything has to all connect and talk to each other, so any bylaw that the master rates and schedules bylaw references has to be brought forward, so that instead of saying master rates and schedules bylaw 760-214, it's gotta say just master rates and schedules bylaw, so that every year we can bring the master rates and schedules bylaw, the fees and things can be reviewed and then approved in general as a complete bylaw, then the bylaw number will change. So it's quite a project, actually. I've had Darlene working on it for me for months now. A resident meeting, and then of course the council orientation on November 5th. Human resource consultant, and our Bashaw Chamber of Commerce again, the Remembrance Day, and then tomorrow scheduled is the council orientation, which I've got a cell phone contact from Camrose County. They were gonna keep me posted if there was any changes due to weather. And so if they decide to reschedule or cancel it because the roads are not great, then I will forward council members a text. So items worked on, it seems like I'm forever working on a arena schedule. I get it done and then I gotta do it again. Anyway, human resource follow-up, development permit arrangements for staff changes, various walking, phone inquiries, meeting follow-up and staff support. And as mentioned, we have a public works staff absent, and this is adding additional challenges to our team. So we're looking at running like some casual ads just to see if individuals wanna work on an on-call as needed basis. And then minor hockey has also stepped up, and we're offering they were having a meeting tonight anyway too, and so they were wondering if there was any parents within their groups that wanted to volunteer and get trained. So I gave them the standard of what we would be looking for in order to allow someone to be trained and step in kind of thing. So we're working on having some more resources available for arena operations versus, having one staff in there. And I gotta say, this is the first time I've ever canceled any arena bookings ever. Just because it's just.
Reality is what it is.
Well, and I've never had anyone off for this long. So, during arena season anyway.
Yeah.
So. Anyhow. we're
Thank you,
hoping to
Teresa.
Have things improve.
I move to accept council and staff reports as presented.
Thank you to this very speedy Councillor McIntosh. All in favor? Carried. Nice letter from Grant Glazier. Porto Glazier.
And what we might do is just sort of keep the letter handy. Monday's presents a bit of a challenge for him, because that's kind of one night that he's on parenting duty with his children.
Oh, okay.
So, but he was expressing the interest to meet with council and wanted to introduce himself and connect, so.
We could do a special meeting for that if we want to. Could be a short one.
Okay.
Short and
welcome that.
Okay.
a little more casual. Somebody care to receive that as information?
I can do that.
Thank you, Cindy. All in favor? Carried. Now we need a motion to proceed in closed session.